The responsibility of every man is to try to locate and pinpoint the enemy's position. Therefore, you must look, listen, observe, and pass on any information to the section commander. The first step is a quick overall spot check in the areas that could be potentially the most dangerous to you. This area, for instance, is the likely spot. It offers a good field of fire to the enemy and provides him with effective cover and background. These sheep pens are also good cover to the enemy, and there's enough room for him to maneuver if things get hot. The edge of this wood, overlooking open ground. Again, there's good cover and suitable background for the enemy to merge into. If the spot check is negative, the next step is to divide the area into foreground, middle distance, and distance, so that starting from the foreground and moving from right to left, each part in turn should be scanned thoroughly, making sure that no part of the ground has been missed. The enemy are well hidden, but we know they're there, somewhere, and they're probably in a position to direct their fire effectively. So be alert, observe, watch every detail. Your life will depend on it. The sound of enemy gunfire will help to give you an approximate indication of his position. So concentrate on that and listen. Every weapon makes two sounds. The first sound you hear is the crack of the bullet as it passes overhead. The second sound, slightly later, is the thump of the weapon being fired. It's the second sound that's important in locating an enemy position. So, if you ignore the first crack and concentrate on the thump, it will give you an idea of the direction of the enemy. With experience, timing the interval between the crack and the thump will also give you an approximate range as well. Remember, the greater the range, the longer is the interval between the crack and the thump. The enemy's first mistake, a badly chosen firing position. He forgot to consider his background. Mistake number 2. Nothing catches the eye quicker than a sudden movement. Mistake number 3. Careless camouflage. Only just the glint from an uncamouflaged helmet, but it's enough to give away another enemy position. So far, so good. But how to find that enemy machine gun? Maybe a taste of his own medicine will draw his fire.
Gun group. 200. Straight ahead. Enemy in that area. Fire!
Well, that didn't work. So let's try something different. Now that we've found the enemy, the next step is to direct our fire effectively onto him.
Rifle group. 200. Oak tree. 7 o'clock. Enemy machine gun. Await my order. Gun group. 200. Quarter left. Edge of small wood. Enemy position. Fire!
We have shown you how to go about finding an enemy who is skilled in the arts of camouflage and concealment. It is vitally important because no matter how good a soldier is at shooting, he is useless if he can't locate the enemy. We have shown you 4 things to look for which can give an enemy position away. First, bad choice of fire position. He forgot to check his background. Second, movement. Watch for any sudden movement. It's one of the most frequent mistakes. Third, careless camouflage. A glint from an uncamouflaged helmet. And fourth, well, you saw for yourself how the smoke and flash gave away the position of the machine gun. When we found the enemy, our next step was to direct effective fire onto him. And that involved the ability to judge distances and to mark and indicate targets. An ability which only comes through a combination of good training and practice. Here at the depot, we can see in more detail exactly how every recruit is trained to mark and indicate targets. A well-trained enemy isn't likely to use obvious cover. So when he moves, we must note carefully where he goes to ground, or we'll lose him. That's why we have our systems of marking targets. It is easier to recognize a given target if you know the area in which the target is likely to be. So your section commander will point out your arc of fire, firstly giving the axis or center of arc. In this case, we'll use the greenhouse with the white gable, like this. He will then give the left and right boundaries. For example, look to the left. You will see a prominent concrete structure near the skyline. That is your left boundary. Now look to the right. You will see a small red and white house. That is your right boundary. He'll then point out prominent objects or reference points, giving each a name and the range to it, like this. 300, left of axis, small shed, bottom right corner. This will be known as shed, and remember the range, 300 meters. Now look right of axis, 200, lone bush. This will be known as bush, and the range, remember, 200 meters. Accurate judgment of distance is absolutely essential for recognizing and indicating targets. If the enemy does take cover behind a prominent object like this, he is easy to pinpoint. But if he chooses a large patch of cover, his position becomes much more difficult to mark. So it is vital, if you're not to lose him, that you mark his position in relation to a nearby prominent object. Good anticipation is equally important too. If the enemy disappears into a fold in the ground, like this, you must be able to anticipate the point at which he is likely to break cover. In this instance, because there's no cover to the left, it seems logical that he'll follow the fold in the ground until he's near to the next piece of cover. If we're right, that's where he's likely to make a dash for it. And that's when your anticipation should pay off. Here's another example of intelligent anticipation. The gap between this hillock and the next piece of cover on the right is much wider than the gap at the other edge of the hillock. So, it seems likely that he'll make his break between the two. And, wait for it, there he goes. In battle, of course, your enemy rarely appears singly. They're usually in numbers. So marking their positions when they go to ground is very difficult. You have to be extremely quick. If you do become confused, mark the nearest target as potentially the most dangerous. But if you can, try to cover them all. Then shoot the one that you're certain of killing. When your section commander indicates a target, you must be able to recognize it so that you can shoot at it. To make recognition easier, there are certain methods of indication that we normally use. The direct method is used to indicate obvious targets, and it is based on the arc of fire. Having visualized your arc of fire, you must visualize a number of lines that divide your field of fire into a number of sections. First, establish the axis. Then visualize other lines running left and right of the axis, like this. Then half left and half right, and 3/4 left and 3/4 right, a quarter left and a quarter right, and finally slightly left and slightly right. Now, we can engage a target by firstly giving group, then range, indication, and finally the type of fire.
Gunner, 200, quarter right, small bush, enemy, fire!
Yes, very easy. But how about trying it for yourself, without any help from me? Right? Here we go. Arc of fire as before.
Rifle group, 200, quarter left, gate, right end, enemy, fire!
Right. Well, that's the direct method, and it's quite easy. But for less obvious targets, your section commander may use a combination of reference point and direct method. You remember you're given reference points when you're given your arc of fire. In this case, your reference points are the small shed and the lone bush. Now, using the combined methods, your target will be given this time as follows.
200, lone bush, slightly left and below, fold in ground.
Okay? Now try it on your own.
300, shed, slightly right and beyond, first lone bush.
For indicating more difficult targets, we use a combination of the reference point and the clock ray method. For this, you must imagine a clock face standing up on the landscape with its center on a given reference point. This time, as well as being given the range to the target, the reference point, and whether the target is left or right of it, you are also given an approximate hand on the clock face.